and welcome to this week's episode of the Dadas Show, coming to you straight from Wama, Africa. I'm your host, Ashiko Mbune. Now, CBC was introduced in Kenya in 2017 and is set to fully replace the 844 system. CBC, which stands for Competency Based Curriculum, is a system of education that primarily focuses on skills acquisition and cognitive development. This is definitely different from the 844 system, which is largely biased on theoretical knowledge. Now, this move has gotten very varied reactions from teachers, parents, the educational fraternity, guardians, and even the students themselves. Some are obviously applauding the government for this move, saying that CBC prepares and equips the learners with the 21st century skill set, while others have claimed that CBC is a waste of time, is expensive and time-consuming, and is not designed for the common mwananchi and their family. While we await the findings of the CBC task force that is set to investigate these very concerns, we here at the Dadas Show will seek to get the opinions and find out what your thoughts are on this matter. Today we shall be speaking to individuals who are stakeholders and participants in the CBC system of education. And as always, we encourage you at home to take part in this conversation by keeping us updated and keep this conversation going on all our social media platforms at Dadas, the Dadas KBC. We welcome your comments and your feedbacks. So before we get into it, let's take a look at the following feature.
For 32 years, Kenya has thrived under the 844 system of education, a system that saw children spend 8 years in primary school, 4 years in secondary school, and another 4 years at the university level. 2017 marked the introduction of the competency-based curriculum. A competency-based curriculum emphasizes on what learners are expected to do rather than mainly focusing on what they are expected to know. At Gravity's CBC Center, a skill development center along the Eastern Bypass was set up by education stakeholders, which gives learners theory lessons in a class setup.
We have been having learners here from different schools. Every day we have schools coming in to learn the practical aspects of CBC.
The CBC system, which has elicited mixed reaction since inception, saw His Excellency the President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, during his inaugural speech, promised to set up a task force to review and evaluate the competency-based curriculum for easy implementation.
There is a robust conversation, ladies and gentlemen, in the country on education, and in particular, the implementation of CBC curriculum. Public participation is critical in this matter. I will establish an education reform task force in the presidency, which will be launched in the coming weeks. It will collect views from all players in line with the constitutional demand of public participation, and we are particularly alive to the anxieties of parents on the twin transition of the last 844 class and the first CBC class in January next year. I assure all that there will be a solution to the matter before then.
The Kenya Publishers Association backed the government's move on CBC implementation, the chair, Kiare Kamau, referring to the 2633 system as the best.
CBC is perhaps the best curriculum in this part of the world, and we know that it will prepare the learners for the challenges that inform the 21st century, and it is the road towards the first world.
Mr. Kiare Kamau notes for CBC to succeed, all key players in the education sector must be involved.
The country was very ripe for CBC, and the publishers welcome and resonate with the CBC. It helps in terms of critical thinking, producing learners who are able to think critically, learners who are able to be creative and innovative.
The Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, speaking at a music festival, addressed the anxiety over the future of the CBC system.
Our new government will very soon be unveiling a task force to look at educational reforms, including CBC, with a view not of abolishing it, but reviewing it so that we retain what is good and improve what is causing concern.
CBC comes with its own share of challenges as parents are divided in their views about the system.
So changamoto kubwa ni kustukiwa tu ghafla. Tunaitishwa hii na pesa hau. Pande ingine. Kama Kongo kuna wakati wameitishwa mayai. Hii mayai ikienda shule wanga irudi. So watu hujui inaenda inapikwa, wanakula, ama inauzwa, ama inawekwa. Unajua mayai si kitu ya kuweka ikae kwa muda itaharibika tu. So hiyo ni kitu kingine. Kasikia mzazi mwingine akisema naye andalia wake imetishwa kuku. So hii kuku sijui anaitishwa nini.
Meanwhile, deans of schools and education in private and public universities were urged to bear the responsibility of ensuring that all teachers graduating moving forward attain skills to deliver the competency-based curriculum.
We are already there, and we are doing our best to ensure that matters CBC, we are very well prepared. And we are looking forward to that task force, and we will contribute fully, and we will be part of it to ensure that at the end of the day, we have a very good curriculum for this country.
Welcome back. Joining me today to discuss this matter is Madam Mutheo Kasanga, who is the director of Lukenya Schools. After that, next to her, we have Madam Sarah Mukabana, who is a parent with a child in the CBC system in the private school sector. And finally, we have Lucy Wanjiko, who is a parent of a child in the public school, but also in the CBC curriculum. Thank you so much for taking time to join me on this panel. I'd also like to acknowledge my wonderful audience, and I'm honored that each and every one of you had time off your busy schedules to join me as we discuss this. Karibuni sana. Madam Kasanga, thank you so much for joining us. I know it was quite a drive from Machakos, and we really do appreciate your presence on the Dadas show panel. Now, the 844 education system was introduced in Kenya in 1985. And of course, over the decades, it's produced, you know, a good crop of individuals who have been very instrumental to shaping the country to what it is right now. So of course, when we discuss CBC, some might argue that, you know, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And they would wonder what was the need for the reforms that, of course, led to CBC. And that's my question to you today. Why did we need the educational reforms?
The perception that 844 is not broken is something very, very new to these last 3 years, actually. The narrative before was how broken 844 was and how we needed to do something about it. But to really look at it, we need to go back to just understand how 844 came online. Then we can begin to see how we got to where we are.
Yes.
So in 1981, there was a recommendation via the McKay report that was looking into the establishment of a university called Moi University. And in the process, in a byline in that report, they actually said, and there are problems with students accessing university education. And you can see why. Establish a university, yet there are no students. What is the problem? How come there are no students for university, yet the country needed graduates? They noted that the problem was the A-level and how so many children were dropping off after O-level. And they looked at the system and said, we can do away with this. And then we look at what is left and restructure it. And that restructuring is what came up with a structural reform called 8 years of primary, then 4 years of secondary, and then 4 years of university. Structural reform. Then they noted that, you know, in the government at the time, kids are dropping off standard 7. They can't help themselves. Maybe we equip them with some technical skills and see whether we can't have better people, even if they drop out, they know something. Yeah. And that is how the technical subjects came to be incorporated. Now, when we look back, there are no clear documents. These are political problems being solved by infusing into a curriculum, okay? So the biggest problem was that the standard 7 exam used to be 4 subjects: general paper, maths, English, and I think science, general science, yeah, science. It was a multiple choice exam that tested theory. So now the exam expanded to 9 subjects over 3 days instead of 1 day. Still multiple choice. So you did your technical subjects, but you are tested on the theory of those subjects. In primary school, those of us who went to, I was one of those first years, we were just told, you do your practicals, but they are not marked. They don't contribute to your KCPE mark. So we did them. And then you go to secondary, it's the same thing. But in secondary, they started adding a bit of testing of that.
Yes.
Okay? Free primary education 2003. You have to note that. That is a key moment in Kenya. When all the students were allowed to go into school, public schools, free of charge. Then now the public school teachers started complaining that the practical subjects are too heavy when the student numbers are like
that
this.
large, yes.
So how did the government react? They dropped all the practical subjects in 205. And that is where the rain started beating us. Because the reform we should have done was an infrastructural one and add infrastructure. You know, I build primary schools. Yes. At that time, I think we had about 20,000 public primary schools. Now we are at about 44,000.
Yeah.
And it literally went and broke whatever was left of 844. Now in 2012, 2010, Kibaki listened to Kenyans and said, okay, yeah, this thing is broken now. It's just a cramming. Now it is just about purely cramming from primary all the way to secondary, okay? And, oh, sorry, something else happened in secondary. They decided that all secondary schools should be doing pure sciences.
Yes.
When we started 844, you could have an option for doing physical sciences if you knew you didn't want a career in the sciences. So no matter the type of school today, you have to do pure sciences.
You have to do a science.
Whether you want to go and do journalism and you never want to see maths again, you will do it, pure. Science, you'll do biology and physics, most probably. And chemistry, you'll pick 2 sciences.
Yes.
So in 2010, Kibaki appointed a task force. And the chair of that task force was the vice chair of the Mackay task force, Professor Odhiambo. And Professor Odhiambo went around this country in 2012 and they collected views of Kenyans. I believe the time, is it Saitoti who was the Minister for Education? I can't remember well. But they did a countrywide tour calling for opinions. Yes. And the consensus was, number 1, Kenya has the longest primary school cycle at 8 years. We need to align to world norms. Teachers in primary schools are facing children with problems that should be dealt with in secondary school.
Yes.
Yeah? So they recommended, let's bring it down to the world average of 6 years of primary school. They also noted that in rural areas and in poor populations, children did not go to nursery school. Nursery school was not part of our curriculum. So they recommended we do the world average, which is 2 years of nursery school.
Now that's the PP1 and PP2.
Yes. Yes. Before, private schools used to offer 3 years of nursery school. We did have a curriculum and it was approved by KICD, the KIE then. And some government centers had some curriculum that was called DISESE that was also approved by the government.
Yes.
And then they said, let's break secondary school into 2. Let's stop doing this broad education that then gets narrowed in university, which is largely against most what world systems do. They want you to have exposure, then you want to have specialism that you then fine-tune in higher education. And let's have a curriculum that speaks to basic education. Basic education being nursery to age 18, okay? That speaks, let's forget university, let university sort itself out, let TVET sort itself out. Let us stop structuring university within the basic education framework, which is what 844 was doing. Yeah. So now we talk about 2633 and we leave it at that.
Okay, so thank you so much, Madam Othel, for expounding actually in detail some of what you have talked about. I don't think I had any information about it, even in my vast research. And you're right about the 844 paper. So those are things that we should task Kenyans are doing. Now, we have come from the theory about CBC. Let's move on to the practical part, since we are all about practical and theory. Sarah, you are a stakeholder, you are a consumer of this particular educational curriculum, and your daughter is in a private school, please tell us what your experience has been, you know, from the onset of her education in CBC.
I mean, where to begin? I feel like I've gone back to school myself, because the CBC system, from what I understand it, because to be honest, I haven't understood it all the way through, right? But from what I understand, it's that it's supposed to create a more well-rounded type of student, one that doesn't rely on academics. As you said, it was 844 was very theory-based, and particularly for me, as I came to discover as an adult, I'm a much better visual learner than I am with notes, and you know what I mean? So it's been, I was excited for the idea, yes, but in execution, it has been exhausting. And I feel like a lot of parents would side with me on this one, because I think our biggest, at the top of that list is, why are we doing homework again? Who brought us here? You know what I mean?
You know you finished.
I finished.
You finished your work.
Seems like a you problem, you know what I mean?
Like, you finished your work, but now yet give us a few examples of some of the things that you found yourself doing.
So yeah, this is the thing. Like, a lot of the projects, I assume I am battling between my logical brain and what is being presented to me, yes, in being presented in front of me, right? Yes. So kids these days have a lot of projects. First of all, homework costs money. Since when? You know what I mean? Yeah. I also feel like it's a conspiracy, like there's a conspiracy going on between printer makers and the CBC system, because mommy, we need to print 3 pictures of what?
I've had a lot of back and forth about having to go to the cyber, and people having to go to the cyber and take a picture and scan this. And
I literally had to build a small home office before even the pandemic happened and all this. I literally had to have a small office space that has a printer and all these things, just so that it's a little more convenient for my daughter to get access to what she needs to do for school. But I think the bigger problem for me anyway has become the competition between parents when it comes to the kids and the projects. So for example, the other day I saw a friend of mine was building a parking lot. I didn't have to do it, but I saw her, she had to build a parking lot with, I guess, household goods and stuff like that. And it's essentially supposed to be making the kids a little more resourceful.
Exactly.
So you need to make this, what can you find within your environment to make it, right? Yeah. But the competition between the parents, I don't know how it is in public schools, but in private schools, it's become, because it's also a little bit of a status symbol, if that makes sense. Yeah. Who is being the better parent? Who is being the more involved parent?
It's sort of like a KPI, for parents, and let's say, quote unquote, middle class parents, it's become a KPI for how involved of a parent am I. If I'm able to build a full parking lot with little cars that have a working sound system, so and it's this small.
This is what I saw my friend had done. Like, she had done a marvelous project, but equally in her post had said her child was asleep, right? And I was like, I totally related to that, because in that moment I was able to be on the outside looking in, and I was like, man, I do the same thing, you know what I mean? Like, my kid is asleep and me, I'm over there burning the midnight oil let me glue these things together and stuff like that, and I'm like, so how effective is it being really? Like, if the projects have become more of a status symbol than getting the kids to be more resourceful about how they execute their work.
Which I believe was, sorry to cut you, which I believe was the intention of CBC, as Madam Muthewa said. Yeah. It's important for them to be able to adapt to the environment as it is. Yeah. So you're not constantly depending on other things. If you can be able to, it's the whole teach a man how to fish kind of situation.
Exactly.
Now, we've heard about the private school situation. Sasa, public school, Lucy. Of course, we've already talked about zile issues ziko kwa public school, because our public school saizi, when we all decided all the children are going to go to school. And of course, when we're looking at a situation, we're looking at perhaps, you know, a low-income household, etc., maybe one parent, two parents, but there's a reason why you have picked the public school. Experience yako na CBC, imekuwaje mami?
For me, venye tulikuwa sisi tunasoma tukua primary school, wajua tulifanya out of 700, na wengine tukaondolewa 2000 wakati wa Mwai Kibaki, tukafanya out of 500. So those subjects tuliondolewa art and craft, home science, music, then zimerudi. Mtoto unaambiwa ukiwa mzazi tengeneza gitaa. Asubuhi maybe ulikuwa job umechelewa, mtoto amelala, umepata mtoto amelala. Asubuhi mtoto anakuambia tuliambiwa tutupeleke gitaa. Na umetoka kazi asubuhi utafanya aje? Now mahali sasa mtoto wangu wanasomea public school, wanaitishwa vitu. Sisi tulikuwa tunafanya home science, tulikuwa tunashona bean bags, remember in class 4.
Boshori, yes.
Boshori,
Oh yeah, in class 5 bean
yeah,
bag, yes.
So this time wanaitishwa crochet, uzi, nini, wazazi wengine hawapati. Ni challenge kwa wazazi wengine. Wengine wanapata, yes, ama mtoto akwambie mapema utatafuta. But nowadays, wakati wako sahi, public schools wako na challenges mingi sana. Kwanza mtoto, saa zingine watoto hawana chakula. Hiyo ni shida iko kwa public school. Umeitishwa uzi, umeitishwa crochet, umeitishwa nini, na mtoto ana chakula na saa zingine huyo mtoto ana travel. Sisi tulikuwa tunatembea mguu. Mahali siku hizi mahali watoto wako sahi kuna kutravel, shule iko distance kubwa. Sasa mzazi anashindwa utatafuta fare, utatafuta chakula ama utatafuta hizo vitu wanaitishwa. So ninaona ikiwa challenge. Yeah.
I hear you. And I think that is something that has actually really, one of the things, Mutheo, that has actually been able to bring some of the negative, you know, feelings that we have towards a CBC, because other people are saying that, you know, it's expensive. I remember I heard of an incident actually very recently about a matatu driver who was talking about, he got home and he thought they had made chicken and he was very happy and he thought his wife, for lack of a better word, ameangukia, only to be told that half of that chicken has to be taken to school and they can only consume half of that chicken. Now, if we look at a situation where that family is a family of 7 and they're eating, and the chicken, we are Kenyans, chicken is perhaps in some households, it's a celebration meal. So, my question to you is, as somebody who's interacted with CBC, someone who's actually, you know, with the people, is there going to be a point where parents such as Sarah and parents such as Lucy will be operating from a level playing field? Because it looks like their set of problems are big and they may actually influence the success of this particular curriculum.
Here's the thing, the big picture for CBC is to improve the lives, you know, to give the child better skills. And this is a problem we'll have to grapple with. We are not a Western country, we are an African country. And we are trying here to do, I think it's a very bold decision that the government took to actually roll this out. The easier thing was to keep quiet over the problems. Kenyans continue complaining, yes, while parents in private school continue to get all the access to the extracurricular activities that now enable that 21st century child. Yes. And this is a fact. Private schools, like primary schools, have been teaching ICT for the better, from 2 or 3.
Which is true.
Free primary. That is when private schools became a thing in Kenya. Before then, there were barely any private schools in Kenya. They were purely for the rich. Now you find private schools, 144 in Kibera. So you can't even argue that private schools are for the rich anymore. But any parent with 10 shillings extra would rather spend it on their child, whichever way. And if we continued with 844, the iniquity of the haves and have-nots, whether that have is in this locality or in Kibra, would have been stark. Just look at say drama festivals.
Yes.
And look at how private schools sweep. Why? Because they invest in extracurricular. Yeah, and these are the skills that now we are saying, bring them back into the curriculum. Let every child experience. This is what we are saying. So when we are fighting this, rather than looking for innovative ways to solve a problem, we are denying the poorest child access to a decent education. That is what we are doing. And that for me is the biggest fear about CBC right now. The fact that I know private school parents will continue to enjoy luxuries and continue to pay and work for those things, yet the poorest child gets totally blocked, goes back to a cramming curricula that completely blocks them. Look at the pass rates of Kibra.
Yes.
All of it, both public and private. Just look at the pass rates. They tell you there's a problem. Yet we are comfortable now saying it's too expensive. Rather than looking for innovative ways of solving the problems. The most frequently asked questions, like you're saying, is that one of expense? Unreasonable asks. We are saying parents are doing work for parents. I get shocked and appalled when I hear that. Why would a parent do anything for a child? At what point did it become okay for a parent to feel good when their child scores high on a mark on a project they have done?
They did not even know about that. That's, I
Correct.
think that is actually the call to action most of the time before we jump on to the next question.
Correct.
Because we are seeing the situation, and we may be the architects of our own problems. Because if you, at the end of the day, if you do tell a child, because we grew up when we are talking about, what's a thing called the shaker? That was another thing that we saw parents complaining. Why are the parents complaining about going to go and make the shaker? Go with the child. You're supposed to be in a participatory, not a substituting role. You know, go to the shop point, let them do it themselves.
Correct.
So does that fall down? Is that a CBC? Is that an educational curriculum problem? Or is that a societal and our roles nowadays of parenting? Is that a parenting problem or an education, curriculum kind of issue?
I think we have a problem with our honesty as Kenyans.
Yes.
First and foremost. And, like when she mentions the example she has given,
yes,
my jaw drops.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So what is the poor child in a boarding school? You said you went to boarding school when you were pretty young. Like I ran a boarding school in primary. My rule to teachers, if a boarding child cannot do it, I don't want to hear a parent who is a day scholar can do it. Who is the parent for the boarders?
Exactly.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you have to really encourage, it's called agency, kids to be able to think through a problem and solve it. Mom, I don't have bottle tops. Go collect them, please, free range. Go collect them. Why should a parent then now go collect it? Why don't you go together and say, oh, there's a kiosk there, they sell sodas. Let's ask the shopkeeper. Tell the shopkeeper. Teach the child. Show up them how to fish. They will become fishermen. Don't give them.
Don't give them.
Yeah. You know, I think it's a Kenyan problem, and it's a citizenship problem, and it points to some of the things that CBC is also trying to solve. There's an aspect of CBC called parental engagement. Granted, even us as schools, perhaps we are grappling, because for us, we've always been the authority figures.
Yes.
We demand you come to school on this day. You talk to that teacher. Now, CBC is actually saying, you can tell me where I'm going wrong. And some of the things we are doing as schools, it's wrong. You cannot expect a parent to come at night and be told, come with, I don't know, a guitar, like she said. That is unreasonable. Call out the school. Tell them that is not possible. That is what reasonable parental engagement is. Yes. By law, when you look at the Basic Education Act, all schools are supposed to have PTAs,
yes,
public and private.
Yes.
A formal organization of some sort that allows parents to feed back. The better schools actually now use technology where parents are in WhatsApp walls and school communicate one-on-one.
Yeah.
We have to claim responsibility for that engagement.
Thank you so much, Madam Kasanga. I think that is a good place to go on a break. But I do like that outlook. Let us challenge, let us claim, let us actually not own up and take responsibility for some of these things. When we sit down and we talk about, okay, fine, then there's always a thing about there are many ways to kill a cat. I don't know why people are killing cats, but there are many ways to skin. Is it skin a cat?
It's better a cat than the rat.
Oh. So while we are trying to discuss that, I believe there's a way that people need to be a bit more open to this particular education and see how we work around some of the things that we are experiencing. So we're going to take a short break on that note, and then we'll come back with the question and answer session. Thank you so much.
Welcome to Wama Africa, located on Mthangari Road in Lavington. Wama is a social enterprise restaurant, bar, and function space which trains young adults living with disability and special needs. Wama is open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner from 8 a.m. till late, 7 days a week. Walk-ins are welcome.
Welcome back to the Dadas show. We've gotten to my favorite part of the show, which is the interactive session, which the question and answer, very interactive session that gives me an opportunity to interact with my audience and hear what their take is on the topic of the day. So to start us off, we have a question. We have actually somebody who is part of our audience, and we're very privileged to have them. We have Maria. She will start us off, and she'll tell us, first of all, a little bit about herself.
Thank you, Ashiko. My name is Liza Soke. I'm a student at Kenyatta University. I'm from my training. And now I have a question to Madam Kasanka. I hope that is her name.
Yes.
Now, I have a question. I'm from my training and I was in high school. One of the questions that I was asking the teachers if they are ready to receive the student next year, God willing. And one of the questions that the answer that they were giving me, that they are telling me that they are not ready because they went for training for a very short. The training they were not that trained because they were given a very short time. Now, my question is, how competent are the teachers that they were training? Are the teachers well trained? Are they ready to receive the learners next year? Because most of them, they are saying there. Even others are telling me that they forgot what they were taught.
They were being taught. Thank you so much.
Yeah, they were being taught. That is my question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria. I think that's also a very quick question. Where are we in terms of teacher preparedness?
Okay. Maths is maths, biology is biology, chemistry is chemistry. The world has not changed at all. So this is something we need to knock home. English, Kiswahili, they are still the same. They have not changed. What has changed? It's just the methodology of teaching. And remember that for us, our teaching methodology had fallen apart.
Yes.
You'd find kids being lectured in primary school. And most of you have experienced it. A teacher stands there, writes notes from one end to the blackboard of the other. Your work is to copy, and then you'll be told to cram, and then you do multiple exams to make you cram that in primary and secondary. What we are saying here, that has to change. We have to move to more facilitative teaching so that we can lead an inquiry-based learning process that incorporates projects in it. That's what we are saying. Now, every teacher learns about different teaching methodologies. But like Griffin said, Griffin was the director of Starrell. Most teachers become the teachers they saw their teachers being. They never try to be different. Now we are saying through a system-wide reform, we want teachers to be different in Kenya. Imagine that's the biggest change. Now we are saying no, we want all round. That is the change. All this noise you are hearing, imagine that's the change. Yeah. Our teachers are ready. It is our mindsets that are not ready.
I like that. I think that's a good place to stop. And I think this is to also assure the parents that the teachers are ready. It is the mindset. And it's not only the mindset of the parents, not only the mindset of the children. Remember, if the parents' mindset is warped, then the child's mindset will fall, it will fall into form. It will also be warped. So let's also change our mindset. Let's have a different approach. And to be honest, the approach is actually good because we, as 844, not shunning what got us to here, we have all this theory. But when it comes to applying it, when you are given a question about how many times do we apply physics in the house, we cannot be able to pinpoint and say that was physics, because what we were told is X times what, and that was it. But we live and we apply these things on a daily basis. Chemistry, biology, we do that on a daily basis. So I think the whole topic about mindset is also very crucial. Thank you so much, Maria. That was a fantastic question. And I do wish you all the best of luck as you finish your training on becoming a teacher. I hope you're going to be the teachers that we want, not perhaps the teachers we had. Yeah, so the next question comes from Mr. Hamlet.
Okay, my name is Hamlet. I'm a student at JKUAT. My question is directed to Madam Lucy. Has the government maybe implemented some regulations and maybe set of rules to financially to implement the CBC, maybe financially? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and I think that one I would also welcome, Madam Mudeu, but we're going to start with Lucy. For the parents who are not able to do, are you feeling like the government is doing enough to help students in public schools?
311 in grade 6. So wamedividiwa to 6 north, 6 south, 6 east, 6 west. Each class iko na 72 kids ama 73 hapo. Sasa they share books, ile public government wanapeana, they share. And hiyo class, not a big class, inakuanga watoto wanakaa kwa desk kama watoto 4 ama 5. So I don't think they have enough facilities. Government wamepeana enough facilities. Then hiyo issue ati wanaenda secondary school. Mimi nilikuwa I prefer wakae tu kwa primary school, wajengewe classes zao, which naona hata kama shule yenye wako sijaona wakianza, sioni hizo classes kama ziko. But we are hoping maybe watatengeneza. But hiyo issue ya kwenda high school, mtoto ni mdogo, grade 6 anaenda aje high school, surely. Inyi wote umeenda secondary schools. And unajua form 1 penye mtoto unakuanga, then peleka mtoto wa grade 6. Atawe make aje, sioni kama hiyo itakana. Naomba tu government waweke hao hizo classes zikue kwa primary schools.
Well, I think that's a good, yeah, Model, please.
In 2017, the government took away, they started procuring the books. And in government right now, like you've heard from her, yeah, there are textbooks and they're supposed to be one-on-one. Parental engagement is necessary here because it comes from capitation. The money for textbooks comes from capitation. So if a parent notices that they are sharing books, that needs to be flagged. Because as far as the government is concerned, each child gets this amount of capitation. And from that capitation, they get their share of books. They literally, on paper, have achieved one-on-one because I know of some public schools where they have stores of books because the head teachers made errors in declaring their numbers, so they received more capitation. So the government automatically sends books, then the students are not there, so the books are sitting in stores. So there is an issue there, and that is, I think, a specific school issue. Yes, I'm not in government, but I think it's a specific school issue. The government has declared its books one-to-one because the books are bought from capitation. They are not bought from any other kitty that can now have a numbers issue.
Yes.
So this school needs a looking into, and you need to raise it with perhaps your head teacher and just have a quiet discussion as the parent groups. Kuna shida hapo.
Actually, Model, like something like that, and I like the issue that we're not even touched on that. As much as we're saying this school, I'm sure there are other schools maybe in certain areas. Is the person to really address this? Because the head teacher ataona, what are the channels to report places where, because it kind of feels like it's a bit of misappropriate, the funds and someone has done something, there's someone who needs to be called to book in the whole.
Or the NEMIS numbers are not being, there are all sorts of challenges that can cause that problem.
Yeah.
Technically it should not be there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a corrupt guy.
Yes.
There are problems.
Yeah.
So technically those problems should not be there. You all know of the Parents Association, which is very strong in the parent sector. That is why parents must discuss these issues amongst their groups. It's part of the parental engagement and holding schools to account. We will never have a good education system if we complain outside the schools. We will never have a good education system if we complain outside the schools. It is us parents who must take responsibility and own these schools so that they can deliver for us. I hear her challenges, and they are ours, to do with our socioeconomic levels and whatnot. Some of these problems are solvable. For instance, all public schools have digital devices. It is private schools that may not have digital devices. So when you hear some problems, you're like, okay, so where is the problem-solving agency of a school?
I think that was actually my question.
Yeah.
Who is the person who we can go? Lucy ataenda kwa nani?
And
by
then
the
is
way,
it always serikali's idea? What is it that we can do
yeah, what
here?
can we do?
What is it that we can do here? Okay, I have a neighboring primary school and the chicken project.
Yes.
And here's the thing, just now as I speak to parents out there, we teachers, I know what is going to be taught next year. So if I wake up tomorrow and ask, that's my problem. It's not a system problem. The curriculum is so clean. We know what is going to be taught next year in advance. So this is not a surprise. My nearby primary school, the chicken project, they literally reared those chicks and then they send the children home with them. And the children now ate from home. The project was assessed in school. So now if a school was asking, bring a chicken, that means they didn't follow the instructions of the curriculum. The curriculum was agricultural to rear chickens.
Thank you so much.
You get?
I think you have just completely brought in something that most people, I know I hadn't, most people at home had not really had a chance to look at it. Is the CBC, are the teachers, are the schools, is the administration following suit? Because if someone is being asked for a chicken and yet that chicken was supposed to be reared in school and it was vice versa. But we will go more to that. We want, let us know what you feel about everything that is being discussed today on our social media platforms. We will definitely have a look at that. And of course, all of these opinions are very valid, especially into what solutions will come up for CBC. So the next question is coming from Victoria.
So my name is Victoria Mugore. I am currently a student at Multimedia University, pursuing a bachelor's in actuarial science. And my question is to you, Madam Mutheo. So considering I've been through the 844 system and, seen the challenges, especially the cramming, I didn't really learn the practical aspect and technical aspect of stuff. So I obviously prefer the CBC. Regardless of its challenges, it's something I believe we can overcome as a country. But what exactly is the government doing through the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development to reconcile the issues of how to smoothly bring the system in, the new system? Thank you.
I think a lot of the issues are, for instance, and I need to own this, and we recognized it especially last year when we reopened from the pandemic. The private sector, private schools, I was chair then, I was chair of the Private Schools Association. We inadvertently caused a very big problem that is still lingering. And I choose to call it over-enthusiastic implementation. Yeah? So all this, like when I hear Sarah saying that she had to set up a desk in her house, which is fine, I don't mind, children should have study spaces in their home, it is the prudent thing to do, but the level at which you had to prepare that desk to enable CBC, I think that's over-enthusiastic implementation of a curriculum. Because this curriculum has been designed to ensure that the child in Wajir gets a good quality education. So then now you come to see urban problems, and I think that's where Hamlet was also coming in, where you're seeing problems that make you wonder, what is the child in Mandera doing? Yeah? If I'm being asked this, what is the child there being told? What is it exactly they're able to do? And how reasonable then is this curriculum if this is what I'm being made to do? I want to reassure you all that that curriculum always has options. And I think now that the teacher reforms have now been made mandatory through teacher training colleges, there's a whole upgrading program for primary school teachers. Already we are beginning to see the difference in the sector when we take these teachers who have gone through the mandatory upgrading system. So in primary school, we have very distinct problems that I don't anticipate that in junior secondary we will have.
Yes.
We may not have that. On the issue of whether or not kids can go to junior secondary in a secondary school, I think as parents, we are projecting our fears because we did standard 8. We need to just Google any other country in Africa. Let's not even go far and see. And let us remember that the government has allowed some primary schools that have reasonable infrastructure.
Yes.
To host.
At the last count,
yes. At last count, I believe there were 1,500 public primary schools that are already in the system. There is no point in keeping a child in in a primary school like she's describing. Would that just make sure that child will fail? Shouldn't that child move to the next nearest secondary school
after all,
that has a lab on the very least?
Yeah, it is actually expected, you know. We are in transition. It is okay for, and I think even for the parents, it is okay. It is part of life, it is growth, it is development. How we mitigate it, I think, is completely up to us. Okay, so we'll have the next question from Caroline.
Thank you so much, Ashiko. My name is Caroline Wanjiko. My question goes to Sarah. As a parent, how are you taking the transition from primary to junior high? Considering the kids are still very young, going to mix with older kids.
You're sending a 12-year-old to interact with 18-year-olds who have sort of gone through the process. You know, adolescence imeingia, like there's chaos in the body and in the mind, in my opinion. Like, adolescence just seems chaos to me, right? So, luckily for me, in my school, they just gave us the notification that they've been certified to have a junior high present within the facility. But even then, I wasn't really thinking about them for junior high, you see. Like, the schools that I dream of sending my child to still have that disparity within the age. I guess this is where the parent engagement really has to come in. If the school versus the age issue is a thing for you, like it is for me, I have very honest conversations with my child. And I know people are not supposed, people are debating about the age where to have the sex talk with your child and how detailed, for lack of a better word, how detailed to go within that conversation, because it's not just learning about the parts, it's not just learning about the process of menstruation or the process of growing into adolescence, it's also the psyche. What are some of the thoughts that will come into your mind? What have you seen so far, you know? Because I work with an organization that was part of creating an online child protection resource for parents, right? Like, because kids know so much, but how do they process it? So I'm really hoping that I'm able to stick to being an engaged parent in that sense, because we can't leave everything to the teachers. But if your school is capable of doing it, let the child stay within, at least for the first...
Familiar setup.
Yeah, at least for the first couple of years, just to see where their headspace is at, to see whether, because each child is different. My kid might be mature enough to handle themselves even in adult situations, but mtoto mwingine, not so much, you know? Like they might not be able to stand up for themselves, because that's really it. Being able to understand what's right from wrong, and being able to understand that what the 18-year-olds are doing, what the 17-year-old is doing, is not necessarily my space right now. So if I am doing my job at home, and if we've laid the foundation right, we can only hope we have done the right thing. But that's that's the beauty and ugliness of parenting. You never know you're doing the right thing until akwe mzee. Okay, you turned out okay.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, by the way, Sarah. I think at the end of the day, it's very important to have those conversations. It's very important to know your child. It's very important not to delegate parenting, especially when it comes to their social welfare and how they are faring on. So have these conversations. Also, the parent engagement is so key. I cannot reiterate enough about it? You know, what is the options that are out there? What are some of the schools that have been given permission or have been given the go-ahead to have the junior high within their premise? If you feel like you want your child to still be in familiar setup, there's all of those options. I think the key word today, Modeo, is, you know, the options that are there. Educate yourself. Look for, be a solution provider. Be a solution finder. Don't just be the person who's constantly pointing fingers. We're going to have our last question of the day that is coming from Joseph. Joseph?
I'm Joseph Lemayan, a fourth-year student from Kenyatta University. And I want to ask this question. How did the government of Kenya prepare to reduce the disparity between schools in urban centers and those in rural areas? And because you can see that those schools in rural areas, they cannot easily access things like, for example, swimming pool, in case they require to perform any project or activity to do with swimming pool, things like printing pictures to use them as a resource, and any other things. And maybe parents in rural areas, they are so much ignorant as compared to those parents in urban centers. Okay. So how did the government of Kenya prepare to reduce that disparity? Because at long last, those learners will do the same exams and they'll be awarded the same marks as compared to those in rural and urban areas.
Okay, thank you so much, Joseph. I think we had touched a little bit on that, but it's okay, we can still reiterate.
I saw that clip and I was so annoyed because that was a deliberate effort for a teacher to embarrass the students, because there's nowhere in the curriculum that says that. There's no mandatory swimming. It tells you if you have the option of. And to me, there are schools that don't take advantage of things they have. Have you ever seen swimmers from Mombasa? Every time we hear Kenyan swimmers, they are all from here, Nairobi. Why aren't our swimmers from Mombasa? Yet we see videos like those circulating that are trying to show how ridiculous CBC is. I went and challenged the person who shared with me. I tell him, find out, whoever shared with you, ask them where in the curriculum design that shows. The disparity between our urban and rural areas is something we have in our society, number one. And it's a bigger problem, okay? But that doesn't mean that the children who are in rural areas should not be given a curriculum that also stretches them to the most. And here I'm not talking about swimming pool here. Okay, when you look at the PE curriculum for CBC, it has ball games, it has hoops and things and all sorts of gymnastics and things that we in 844 never really had. And this is important. When how many of us are teachers here? Just by a show of hand, B.Ed? 1. Oh, we are many. Good. CBC is anchored under a theory called the theory of multiple intelligences. Please look it up. It says, like she has said, that learners are different. There are those who are visual, there are those who are athletic. Look at Kipchoge, he's so athletic. Did you know that every time he wins a world record, he earns a diploma? It's not recognized in Kenya. But everywhere else he could walk with all these world records, walk into a master's degree, a PhD degree. Here in Kenya, it's not recognized. We are saying this is what we want in Kenya. We want everybody recognized for their strengths so that they can then just emerge to be the best version of themselves. All we are doing with 844, and this is the truth, we are creating academics. Yeah? And people discover themselves accidentally. Yeah? In fact, if you have qualified to go to university, you're kind of boxed. Yeah? You're kind of boxed into that. When you look at the people who go for diplomas, they have better choice than some of us who went to university. Especially those of us in early years, 844, you never even knew what you chose. You just found yourself in a degree.
You found yourself
and
there.
You did it.
Yeah,
you just did it. Okay? Me, I knew I like to talk. And that's it. So by accident, I thought I'd do journalism, what, then, give me a class, free, I can talk forever. Good. You get accidental. Those who have done diplomas, and I know you know relatives, they are better than us because they tend to be able to choose. And they are not forced by a set of marks. You can go do journalism even if you didn't really pass in English because you did Swahili.
And I like that, and I think that's a good place for actually to be able to call it. And I like what you said. You know the options, because diploma, there was the option of what direction do I actually want? What direction do I actually want to study this thing? What do I actually want to specifically? So by the time we are busy, let us look at something. Let's look at all the options that are available. So we've come to the end of today's show, and it has been very interactive. It's been very insightful. It's been very, very informative. Wherever you stand on CBC, be it whether you're in it or whether you are against it, always remember that, and I will quote the late, great Nelson Mandela, who said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. If we have that in the back of our minds, we will be able to, come up with solutions. We will be have an open understanding and an open mind so that we can be able to allow these children to thrive in the 21st century world. So then again, whether you're in it, whether you're against it, we always look forward to hearing what your opinions are in light of everything that has been discussed today. So on behalf of the production team on KBC, our location partners, Wama Africa, and myself, Ashiko Mbune, I thank you for tuning in, and I will see you same place, same time next week. Have a good day. Bye-bye.